You're listening to the Dispassionate ADF Veteran's Voice. Each episode is generated and narrated using artificial intelligence, specifically Google's Notebook LM, drawing from official records like the Royal Commission Final Report, government strategies, inquiry reports, and lived experience accounts. The narration is delivered in American accents, as that is all that is available in this emerging AI tool. Don't let that distract you. This isn't the voice of any one veteran or organisation. It's Australia's veterans' story, told through evidence, not opinion. Here are your hosts.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really getting into something important, a perception gap, really. This idea that there's just one kind of veteran experience. It's persistent and, frankly, damaging. So our mission today is to cut through that, monolithic view and look at the real complexities, the diverse needs within the veteran community.
Yeah, this is such a critical conversation to have because when you look at the sources we've got, the Royal Commission reports, findings from policy forums, academic work, they all say the same thing, this one-size-fits-all approach. It's not just old-fashioned, it's actually dangerous, ignoring things like gender, age, identity, cultural background. It doesn't just make support less helpful, it actually creates specific, higher risks for certain groups of veterans.
Exactly. And we've pulled together some powerful material for you that really shines a light on this. Stuff from the Women Veterans Policy Forum, for instance, is essential reading here. We're looking at hard evidence, trying to understand why genuine well-being, well, it hinges on recognition and truly culturally competent support. Okay, so let's unpack this. Where should we start? Maybe with that flawed narrative the system often defaults to.
Good place to start. The research points to this kind of dual narrative that keeps popping up in public conversations, in institutions. On one hand, you've got the broken veteran stereotype, really damaging, someone defined only by injury, physical or mental. And on the other, the capable veteran, the one who transitions seamlessly, instantly successful.
Right. And look, while many, probably most ADF members do transition well, the system's rigidity, its inability to adapt, it really hurts those who struggle. It just can't stick to that simple binary view. And here's something crucial the sources kept highlighting: perception. Perception literally shapes behavior. If a veteran thinks the system or, the public just sees them as broken, they're much more likely to internalize that stigma, to stay quiet, to not reach out for the help that might actually be there for them.
Which just creates this awful downward spiral. And what's really striking here, the research shows the struggle isn't uniform, it's highly stratified, it's not random who struggles most. The sources are very clear about specific groups facing higher risk. And that points to systemic issues. We're talking, for example, about ex-serving males who were separated involuntarily.
Involuntarily.
So,
not by choice.
Exactly. Maybe for medical reasons or under that ADF category, retention not in service interest. That kind of exit creates a massive vulnerability.
That involuntary piece feels key, doesn't it? It's not just losing the job. It's that sudden loss, unchosen loss of identity, mateship, purpose, happening right at that critical transition point. It really highlights a failure in the system, not the person. A failure of the process meant to support them when service ends abruptly.
Precisely. It's a failure at a crucial juncture. And that leads us directly into, I think, the most urgent area of stratified risk the sources discuss, which is around gender trauma.
Okay, yes. Let's dive into those stratified risks. We absolutely have to talk about the unique and, frankly, immense challenges faced by women veterans. They make up, about 13.5% of the veteran population? And their difficulties are so often tied to what the Royal Commission called an entrenched, masculinized military culture.
Yeah, the trauma described in these sources, it's often far beyond typical operational stress. We're talking about widespread, often just accepted experiences of discrimination, sexual harassment, sexual assault, the kind of thing often grouped under the term military sexual trauma, or MST. And when we say MST, that covers any harmful sexual experience linked to service. It can be utterly devastating. But what's truly horrifying is the institutional betrayal. What happened after women tried to report or get help?
It's absolutely damning. Some of the quotes in the sources, they're hard to read. Intense pressure to just shut up. Women explicitly told things like, if you open your mouth, this will be the end of your career. The environment wasn't designed for justice, was it? It was about protecting the institution.
Exactly. And the way serious incidents were dismissed, sometimes shockingly cruel. There's this quote from a participant, Gail, in the policy forum findings. She was told, and this is a direct quote, "Don't get upset and shake your tits around. It's not that bad."
Wow. Just wow. That single quote says so much about the depth of the cultural rot. the misogyny being described here. So the failure isn't just that the assault or harassment happened, it's that the response from the institution itself was often re-traumatizing. Instead of support, women got blame, stigma, or they were just managed out, gotten rid of.
And this institutional failure, it has deadly serious consequences. The data is stark. The sources show ex-serving females have a suicide rate 107% higher than other Australian women. That's based on comprehensive data from 1997 to 2021. A number like that isn't an accident. It feels like a direct result of a system that allowed abuse and then punished the victims.
That statistic alone should be a national headline. It signals a complete failure of the duty of care. And beyond the overt abuse, the sources also mentioned how specific health needs could be mishandled, like a woman needing a hysterectomy, a serious health issue, and that situation sometimes being used almost administratively to pressure her towards a medical discharge, linking a personal health crisis directly to ending her career.
Which really raises a fundamental question for us, doesn't it? If systemic failure, misogyny, denial, bureaucratic cruelty is actively shown to increase suicide risk, then the response has to be systemic. It has to be trauma-informed. It has to be specific to the group affected. Just tweaking things at the individual level, it just won't cut it against deep cultural problems.
That feels like the real turning point here. We need to take that understanding that systemic failure causes specific harm and apply it much more broadly. This push for inclusivity has to go beyond gender. It needs to acknowledge all the subgroups who have faced unique challenges or marginalization during or after service.
Absolutely essential. And the sources are explicit about this. They specifically call for official acknowledgement and recognition of the LGBTQIA+ community within the whole veteran support system. Their service experiences, especially thinking about the history of exclusion and policy changes over the decades, they're unique. And that needs recognizing so people feel safe enough to actually use the support services. If the system doesn't see the whole person, their history, their identity, why would they trust it?
And that idea of safety and trust is absolutely critical when we talk about cultural specificity too, isn't it? Particularly thinking about our First Nations veterans and their families. Trust isn't automatic just because an organization has veteran support on the door. It has to be earned, built slowly, requires real effort over time.
Yes, and the input from groups like Australian South Sea Islander representatives, various First Nations organizations, it was really clear on this. Services need to be culturally competent, not just sort of culturally aware. Competence means understanding deeply how cultural background shapes everything: views on health, willingness to seek help, who you trust. For many First Nations veterans, trust comes through relationships, through connection. And services need to be delivered where people feel safe, not necessarily in some big, intimidating government building, navigating complex forms. It's a big shift from you come to us to we need to meet you where you are culturally and physically.
I wonder, though, given how large and, let's be honest, sometimes slow-moving these big defense and government institutions can be, how realistic is this kind of rapid shift to full cultural competency across the board? Does the sheer scale make this kind of tailored support incredibly difficult, maybe even unfeasible in the short term?
That's a fair challenge. It's a huge task. But the sources don't necessarily demand a complete overnight restructuring of, say, the entire ADF. They focus on targeted changes, systemic changes right now, especially at the point where the veteran interacts with the support system. The call is for a dramatic shift towards culturally competent and inclusive service delivery at that interface.
Okay, so what does it look like in practice? This new era of support that's tailored and competent.
Well, a key term that comes up is policy co-creation. Co-creation means groups like the Women Veterans Policy Forum aren't just consulted after the fact, they're vital conduits. They ensure that diverse voices, people with actual lived experience, are actively shaping the solutions from the start. It means, a veteran with lived experience of MST or a First Nations elder who served is actually at the policy design table, not just surveyed later.
And probably one of the most powerful ideas, maybe the fastest way to build trust, is that mandate for lived expertise within the support services themselves. In staff roles, even leadership roles. This isn't just about ticking diversity boxes, is it? It's about having genuine cultural fluency, genuine empathy, baked into the service because the staff understand. They've maybe walked a similar path.
That presence is absolutely fundamental for building real trust. It's non-negotiable, really. And it allows policy to move into genuine co-design, meaning services are designed with veterans and families, not just handed down to them. Because if you design something in a bureaucratic bubble, it almost always misses the complexities of real life, especially for people dealing with trauma or fighting through administrative nightmares.
So this all comes down to accountability then. the sources seem really clear. Any new support bodies or changes to existing ones, they must be trauma-informed, culturally competent, and inclusive from the ground up. That's the only way to start overcoming that deep systemic distrust caused by past failures. Whether it was the overt misogyny we discussed, or just the administrative cruelty of making people wait years for claims. Being trauma-informed, it's shifting from asking, what's wrong with you, to what happened to you.
That shift in perspective is huge. It changes everything. And finally, there were these really clear calls for increased visibility. Which sounds simple, but it's vital for signaling recognition and value. It means actually seeing women veterans in leadership positions on RSL boards. It means ensuring their service is specifically acknowledged at events like Anzac Day. That kind of intentional visibility sends a powerful message. All service is valued, regardless of gender, background, or experience.
So, wrapping up this deep dive, it feels like the core message is that the old promise of support, that sort of historical contract, it has to evolve. Urgently, we have got to move past this idea of a single monolithic veteran experience. The system needs to provide tailored, culturally competent care. And this isn't just about better services. It's an urgent response to systemic failures that have had tragic consequences, especially for women and other marginalized groups.
Absolutely. The evidence is consistent. When the system itself fails through misogyny, through administrative indifference, through cultural ignorance, it can actively increase suicide risk. So that call for a fundamental cultural shift towards genuine inclusivity, it's not just a nice to have, it feels essential. So maybe here's a final thought, something for you, the listener, to really reflect on. If the evidence shows that institutional culture can literally be a matter of life and death for veterans, and if advocacy groups are doing the hard work defining the solutions based on lived experience, what's our collective responsibility? What's your responsibility in ensuring these institutions are actually held accountable? How can you personally help champion a change in the narrative? One that supports veterans based on their unique, complex reality, not just some outdated, simplified, and often harmful stereotype.
You've just heard a conversation built and presented entirely by AI from official sources. No speculation, no shortcuts. From Royal Commission findings to lived experience, we're unpacking the veteran ecosystem. If this episode helped you make sense of the system or gave voice to something you've felt but couldn't name, consider subscribing and liking the channel. That way, you'll be notified when the next episode drops. Send a link to a mate if you think they might benefit from synthesizing the massive information too. We'll upload at least one a week, each tackling a major issue with clarity, dignity, and zero spin. There will be 10 main episodes and many more spin-offs. This isn't just a podcast. It's clarity that is easy to consume and will help to mobilize those who really care.